So I'm like almost 3 weeks overdue for a new hot takes video, and my fault for that. But regardless, hello everyone, and welcome to LEGO Star Wars Hot Takes episode 39. As always, if you have any hot takes or controversial opinions about LEGO Star Wars that you want me to discuss next week, make sure to go ahead and drop them down in the comments below. But jumping right into it, this first one comes from Logan. He says, hot take, the clone troopers from the Yoda Chronicles, Jag 14, both versions, Special Forces Clone Trooper, Special Forces Clone Commander, are some of the best clone troopers LEGO has ever made. And I'm not gonna lie, I've always kind of had just mixed feelings on the Yoda Chronicles as a whole. I know it's nostalgic for a lot of you guys because a lot of you guys grew up watching it. However, as a kid, I actually never watched it, so therefore as an adult, I don't care about it, and I don't really care about the sets that came from it either. And then to double down on that, I know a lot of you guys aren't gonna like this, but the fact that it's a LEGO original series just makes me like not even consider it Star Wars. I know that's kind of a ridiculous old head mindset, but all the LEGO original series shows I kind of just ignore and forget about. Well, actually, besides the Rebuild the Galaxy sets, I actually think for the most part those are cool, and that's mainly just because they're alternative versions of pre-existing Star Wars vehicles, so they're not really new content. However, regarding your comment, I will admit that the clone troopers from this show, or the said clone troopers, do look really awesome. Jag 14, of course, is cool with that transparent arm. That's very unique. But then my favorite one is definitely the Special Forces clone trooper in the all blue. It just looks super menacing, especially the Stormtrooper helmet mold with the unique print on it. I just think that's cool. And then there's other figures like the Special Forces Commander. He's cool too. So again, I will admit these are cool clone troopers. I definitely want to say they're the best ever made, but they do look cool and they're unique. However, just the fact that it's from the Yoda Chronicles just for some reason leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I know a lot of you guys don't like to hear that, but I'm kind of just stubborn in that way, I guess. Rubber Duck Boy says, hot take, the Republic dropship with ATOT is a massively overrated set. If we adjust the original retail price of $250 for inflation, it comes out to $380. I know that price per piece isn't the most reliable metric, but that's a worse price per piece than 2025's Tiny Tank. And you're actually right, that set was very, very expensive for 2009. $250 was pretty crazy. And also on top of that, as many of you guys know, a few months ago back in the summer, I made a video going over the top 10 most overpriced LEGO Star Wars sets of all time, and I used a very specific metric that was by price per gram in order for me to basically make the list 100% accurate, or as accurate as possible, and the Republic dropship with ATOT actually did make that list. According to its price per gram adjusted for inflation, it is one of the top 10 most overpriced sets ever made. But then of course the 2025 Turbo Tank actually ended up being number 1 because despite it having a better price per piece, it has a way worse price per gram than the dropship. But yeah, the dropship was a very overpriced set back in 2009, and I feel like a lot of people just kind of overlook that, or they don't even realize it in the first place. But then on top of that, it also is a bit outdated. I feel like this is a topic I've kind of been talking about a lot recently in hot takes, like sets from the late 2000s being outdated and overrated, because I remember talking about this with the Gunship and then the Venator, and also maybe some other sets as well, like the 2007 MTT. But yeah, the dropship and ATOT does kind of fall into that same category. Today in 2026, it is definitely an outdated set. Now don't get me wrong, it's still awesome. It's one of the best play sets ever made on paper, but you can look at it and just tell, it's from 2009. Not Obi-Wan says, hot take, UCS sets don't need to include minifigures, and midi-scale sets don't either. Those sets are about builds and are usually overscaled anyway. Minifigures on an overscaled set like an LAAT makes it look ridiculous. MBS is a different story though. And well, regarding the midi-scale sets, I don't really care if they include minifigures or not, just because they didn't include minifigures in the past when LEGO originally made them in like 2009. But at the same time, LEGO is charging a lot for them. Like, these are very, very overpriced sets, especially the recent vendor that just released, like, holy crap. So because of that, it would be nice for the price they're charging to get one minifigure with them. But regarding UCS sets, I do think UCS sets need to have minifigures. Now, obviously, UCS sets are about the builds. However, there are sort of two different kinds of UCS sets. The first one being the ones that are minifigure scale, like the Millennium Falcon, the Razor Crest, the recent Sail Barge. Ones like that need minifigures for obvious reasons, so you can put them in the set because they have an interior and whatnot. And then I guess like the Death Star too, even though it's not minifigure scale. But then the other type is the oversized starfighters, which I assume is what you're referring to in this comment. And I mean, obviously I can see the argument for these sets not including minifigures because they're oversized and the builds don't really accommodate minifigures very well. But at the same time, in the mid-2010s, with sets like the UCS TIE Fighter, the UCS Y-Wing, and the UCS Snowspeeder, LEGO started including minifigures with these oversized starfighters. They didn't used to in the early 2000s, but in the mid-2010s they started doing that. And not only were they minifigures, they were very, very highly detailed minifigures with arm printing and excessive leg printing, and they just looked very highly detailed to pair with a very highly detailed model. And since LEGO kind of made that the standard standard in the 2010s, I think it should stay the standard. And if LEGO would have never included minifigures in these starfighters and just kept on releasing them on their own like they used to do, then that would be the standard, and I wouldn't care if they had minifigures or not. But since in the mid-2010s LEGO made it the standard, I think it should stay the standard, meaning that these oversized UCS starfighters should have 1 or 2 minifigures, and they should be extremely highly detailed and high quality. And actually, I mean, I think that should go across the entire board of UCS sets. The larger ones that I mentioned earlier, like the Death Star, the Sailbard, or even the Venator, should also have very highly detailed minifigures with arm printing and everything like that. Remy Barbier says, hot take, we need a First Order troop transport remake. It's been 10 plus years, it would sell well. And I'm not gonna lie, this is kind of like a lukewarm take at best. This is definitely not a hot take, but I still wanted to discuss it because I agree with you, like 100% agree with you. I mean, there's actually a handful of sequel sets I want to be remade, but this one is definitely near the top of the list. And as a matter of fact, I actually think there should have been a 10-year anniversary Force Awakens set. LEGO only released 2 of them, which is understandable. I mean, obviously they were going to release like a whole wave dedicated to this, but the 2 they chose honestly kind of suck, especially Kylo Ren's command shuttle. And I really wish instead they would have went with a First Order troop transport and maybe like a Rey speeder. Those 2 sets as remakes to celebrate the anniversary would have been a million times better. The Scowl says, hot take, after the disaster that was Bakara, I don't want a Phase 2 Wolf anymore in fear of how badly my boy would get butchered. And this is completely valid, and I honestly think this way about every Phase 2 clone trooper that people want made. I mean, obviously 12-year-old me back in 2016 would have loved for these clone troopers to be made, like Commander Wolf, Commander Doom, Echo, and really just any other popular named Phase 2 clone trooper. But today in 2026, after the disasters of figures like Bakara and Commander Fox and even Fives, I'm like, honestly, until LEGO chooses to make these Phase 2 clones good again, I don't want these commanders to be made just because they'd be ruined and then LEGO would not make them again for years and years. And I mean, your comment about Wolf perfectly fits that narrative. They'd use the ugly helmet mold, they'd probably mess up his helmet prints in some way, and then of course he'd also have a printed waist cape, which would just make him look dumb. In the mid-2010s, they would have done him perfectly though, and actually I bet a lot of you guys don't know this, but he was originally planned to be in the AV7 canon, because there's an old preliminary image of the set, and on the box art of that image, it literally says Commander Wolf instead of just 2 Phase 2 Wolfpack troopers, and if they actually would have ended up putting him in that set, that would have been legendary. He would have been one of the best clone troopers ever made, but today in 2026, they just don't make Phase 2 clone troopers like they used to anymore, so he'd probably suck. The Phase 1 clone troopers are a different story though. LEGO rarely makes them anymore, however the modern Phase 1 clone troopers are absolutely beautiful, and I would absolutely love to see a new Phase 1 Rex, a new Phase 1 Cody, a new Phase 1 Fox, you name it, in the modern Phase 1 clone trooper style. I think those will look really good, even though LEGO would still probably give them printed waist capes. Jack Signup49 says, hot take, inaccuracies where there's missing details is better than the wrong detail. It can depend, but one example I thought of was the printed waist cape on the Galactic Marines, and other clones bothers a lot of us fans, but I've actually never seen anyone complain about the Marines missing their pauldron. And yes, I 100% agree with this, and I've actually briefly touched on this in the past, but if LEGO is trying to include something on a figure for accuracy purposes and it looks ugly, I would rather them just not include it. And the best example of this, like you mentioned, really are the printed waist capes on these clone troopers, because I mean, if they're not going to give us physical cloth waist capes, I would rather these figures just not have waist capes at all, because the printed waist capes are actually ugly to me. They just make the legs look tacky and they barely even resemble a waist cape. David B says, hot take, the Bad Batch shuttle is the best $100 LEGO Star Wars set of all time. And I mean, it's a solid set. It's never really jumped out to me like some others, but I can appreciate it. The whole build is kind of the wrong color, but it still does look pretty good. However, in terms of the best $100 LEGO Star Wars set of all time, I would definitely not go that far. There's a lot of sets off the top of my head that I can think of that retail for $100 that are better than this one. The first one obviously being the 2007 MTT. I mean, that's probably the most iconic $100 set ever made, but you could make the argument that that set is outdated. So on top of that, if you don't like the 2007 MTT, you have sets like the 2015 Imperial Shuttle, the 2009 Battle of Endor, the 2017 Jedi Starfighter with Hyperdrive, BD-1 from 2022, the Inquisitor Transport Scythe from 2022, the Mandalorian Fang Fighter versus the TIE Interceptor, even the UCS Obi-Wan's Jedi Starfighter from 2010. I think all of those sets are better than the Bad Batch shuttle, and honestly I could go on. So again, yeah, this set's cool, but in terms of the best $100 LEGO Star Wars set ever made, I have to disagree with you on that one. Anyways though guys, that's gonna do it for this episode. As always, if you have any hot takes or controversial opinions about LEGO Star Wars, make sure to go ahead and drop them down in the comments below. If you're new, please consider subscribing, and if you want to check out more of my videos, you can see on the screen right now.